HR has always been at the forefront of change. But with AI now woven into the fabric of our daily lives, how does technology elevate the foundations of reward? HR professionals are uniquely positioned to lead the charge. In Turbocharging HR, we examine how technology is enhancing the core principles of reward and how HR can harness data, digital tools, and strategic insight to drive meaningful change across organizations.
Hello, welcome to our video series of Turbocharging HR. Today we are talking about the future that everyone's talking about, and that's skills. I'm Ruchi Aurora, and I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague Charlotte Wheeler today. Hi Charlotte.
Hi Ruchi.
Let's start by one of the big questions. Skills is a topic that a lot of organisations are discussing and thinking about what they should do. So what does it actually mean to be a skills-based organisation?
Good first question. So skills-based organisation, skills-focused organisation, terms that we're hearing a lot about in the market, particularly when we're talking to those in HR. What we have seen change is that they started being relatively theoretical, those conversations. Then it moved into conversations that we were having with professional services firms, technology firms that were having more of a focus on skills. And now we've noticed that we really are into design and implementation. A lot of organisations want to think about skills. So coming back to your question about what actually is a skills-based organisation, that could look really different depending on the organisation that you're sitting in. So for those relatively early in the journey, it might mean just taking a bit more of a skills-based lens, thinking about which skills really add difference and help support deliver the organisational strategy, maybe linking that to L&D, for example. For those that are further along in the journey, it really is thinking about that supply and demand you've got in the organisation. What skills have you got and what do you need to be successful? Moving away from purely jobs and traditional career ladders and thinking more about how skills can move people around the organisation to work, to challenges, and supporting that with a technology. So typically that's a talent marketplace, and to use a phrase that we hear a lot about in the market, where skills are then your currency. I think what's important for sort of HR people watching this is to know how fundamental they are in helping establish that sort of skills strategy for the workforce. So how do you define the skills that are required? How do you think about the skills that you already have? And how do you support the development of the strategies to move your talent around?
So mobility playing a really key role in being a skills-based organisation. And like you said, organisations using it for different things like strategic workforce planning, thinking about the supply and demand. As you said, like lots of organisations talking about being skills-focused or skills-based, and that skills strategy being really important part of that thinking. It sounds like it's a lot to do for organisations. It's a journey to go on. How would you describe the return on investment if organisations decide to go down this route? What are they going to get from it?
Such an important question, and one that HR will be faced with if they're thinking of investing time, resources in developing a skills taxonomy. And to be honest, we wanted to know the answer to that question too. So we recently ran a global skills survey. So we had over 1,000 responses from organisations showing how it really is on people's minds at the moment. And one of the questions we asked was about return on investment. And these numbers are self-reported, but organisations that think that they are using skills effectively were 1.5 times better than their peers, their competitors, at attraction and retention, employee engagement, financial performance, and they believe that their employees were twice as productive. So fantastic numbers. I think the question then is, well, where is that ROI coming from? And that's about being able to move your workforce more effectively. So you'll be able to move your talent around based on their skills. So what you don't need to do potentially is bring in people externally. So you're saving on your recruitment costs. You're motivating, you're engaging your employees. It's exciting to be able to move around and fulfill their potential. And so they're more engaged and they're more productive. And lastly, you've got the information you need to direct investment. You've got the data that you need to be able to say, these are the skills that we need to be investing in to make the difference. And so that's where the ROI comes from. And that, if I was building a business case, would be kind of where I would focus in on.
Yeah. And a lot of organizations talk about skills and wanting to do something, but that business case is really important because there's a very tangible return. I know we've worked with organizations who have shared with us kind of actual quantum numbers, hard numbers. Are you able to share some examples?
Yeah, of course. So, as you say, an organisation that have did this relatively recently, and they introduced skills along with other foundational elements. So it's not just skills alone, it's part of a broader framework. So job levelling, which we've talked about in another video that we've done recently, but they saved over £1 million in external recruitment costs simply by being able to use their talent more effectively, be able to kind of increase the mobility to give them exciting opportunities. And that's a huge figure.
And that happened because they had visibility on skills and they could see where there was a business need versus where someone had the skills. So that's ROI where they can be directing in other places of the business as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot. How do organizations go about it? Like, where do they start? What's the journey look like?
It's really funny that you should ask that, because I think a lot of the conversations we've been having with our clients and other organisations, there is almost a kind of a sense of overwhelm. The impact of skills can be so far-reaching. We're talking, recruitment, we're talking mobility. It can link to all of your HR processes. And so kind of where do you start? So the research that I mentioned just a moment ago, we asked organisations, what are you doing? So those that are doing it really effectively, they had some kind of fundamental constructs. So firstly, they had a skills strategy. It sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how much skills is the focus and it's being seen as kind of a work package rather than sort of tying it to something broader that's kind of organisationally led. There are a couple of other key things. So actually having a clearly defined skills taxonomy. So by that, I mean having your skills, having your definitions, and this is used consistently. So the organisation can talk about skills in a consistent way. Thinking about that supply and demand. So what skills do you have in the organisation? What skills do you need? And the most effective organisations, perhaps unsurprisingly, are looking at both of those things. Also thinking about how those skills are assessed. And that can be quite a challenging topic, and organisations thinking they need to go through very deep technical assessments. What we saw was most common was actually managers' assessment and verification of skills and self-assessment. So far simpler. And last but not least, having some sort of technology to support it, which, whether it be a HR change or anything else, we know how important that is. I think surprisingly from the research that we saw, there wasn't that much use of AI. It was more your kind of standard methodologies, your standard learning management systems that were supporting, but certainly a focus on technology. And I guess from our perspective of working with clients, just to give out a few learnings, I think a couple of key takeaways for me are making it as easy as possible. We don't need every skill for every role to be included in this skills taxonomy. We're talking about those really value add that are contributing to organisational success. That's a handful per role. That's not a huge list. Also thinking about your use cases. So we learned from the research as well that not everyone is doing everything. Skills is really far-reaching, the impact is huge, but you can focus on a couple of use cases and get it right. And where we've been working together, some organisations have introduced a pilot. So it's just for part of the organisation, and you can kind of scale up from there. So yeah, I think those are probably the easy ones to overlook, but have made a real difference.
Yeah, that's really helpful to understand, because I often talk to clients and they say, well, skills have been around for a long time, competencies, whatever they were called before. But actually having that skill strategy, creating common language, having a framework that's consistent across the organisation helps you achieve that ROI that you talked about earlier. And how you do it, there's differences in how we've done it before. You talked about the skills assessment, how you build a taxonomy, thinking about skills that are important today versus what's needed in the future as well. So my final question is going to be, so once you've got your skills taxonomy, where do you go from there? Like, what's next?
Is it finished?
Question for you.
Yes. Simply no. there's a bigger lift in terms of developing your skills taxonomy, but for it to be effective, it can't stand still in the same way that skills are evolving, the workforce is evolving, the external environment is evolving. Your skills taxonomy needs to evolve with it. And I think for busy HR professionals and teams, that can feel maybe overwhelming, maybe a bit of a burden. But what we can do now very simply with the use of AI is update those skills taxonomies on a semi-regular basis. So I can talk to our experiences of using our market scan technology, that we can very easily go out to the market and scrape publicly available information for skills. Also now we've got great technology where we can push those to HR teams for them to decide whether that's something they want to integrate in their skills taxonomy or not. So simple. What you do need is a solid governance process around that, understand who's meant to be doing what and when, but it has been as burden-free as it ever has been in terms of skills by making better use of AI.
So technology really making the difference on
huge.
How you maintain it, govern it, keep it alive. I think that's where, again, in the past, things like competency frameworks haven't really lived because they've just been implemented and then not been updated.
Definitely. It's time spent, isn't it? We're definitely with AI moving the work from kind of some more of the administrative to freeing up that time to focus on more kind of strategic and value add things.
Great. Thanks so much, Charlotte. I think
Pleasure.
some of the key takeaways from what you've just said is really the return on investment, thinking about the skills strategy, thinking about how you go about your skills strategy and designing your skills taxonomy, linking it to some priority use cases. And I think the other thing I take away, and it links back to our last video that we did on job leveling, is actually connecting job leveling, skills, job architecture together. Our research also showed us that jobs aren't going away, but skills are there to complement it. So thank you so much for your insights today.
You're welcome.
And thank you everyone for joining us on this video series. We hope you enjoy watching the rest of the videos.